take of the week that just got absolutely bashed by, I'm pretty sure, everyone. I know which way you're going to lean here, being a defensive guy, but Mel Kiper came out with the hot take of the week saying the NFL should ban the cover two. Richard, you buying or selling this hot take?
I'm selling every bit of it, and I'm selling it, and I mean, I'm selling that Mel Kiper should give these kind of takes. Just stick to the draft at this point, because if you're saying stuff like that, then maybe creating rules and adjustments isn't for you. That's a ridiculous take. The defense is already handicapped by so many rules. I mean, illegal contact, pass interference, holding. Corners can't chop 350-pound linemen anymore. They're like, why is this corner just getting pushed over? Well, because the corner's 180 pounds and the guy that's pushing him is 345. Physics is something that we all learn in school, and if you didn't, well, you're getting an example on Sundays when you see corners and offensive linemen interact. It's not going to go well for the corner if they can't create a pile or they can't keep it inside or anything like that. So sell that, Mel. Just enough.
Stick to the draft.
Stick to the draft.
Yeah.
And I mean, stick to the draft.
Speaking of the draft, Richard, buy or sell? We could rewind time a bit back to April. Jaden Daniels should have been the number 1 overall pick.
Uh-oh. But Mitchell, sometimes, and I've said this before, sometimes the benefit and the blessing is in not going number 1. It was CJ Stroud the year before, where you're like, man, CJ Stroud should have went 1. I'm sure CJ Stroud is sitting right now in Houston, like, very happy to go to. This is probably the only time in my life that second is just where I want it to be. And this is the same situation with Jaden Daniels. He's walked into a situation where there's a different level of stability, a head coach, a different system, a different city, different coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. And sometimes the right situation for you might not have been Chicago. Maybe he goes to Chicago and his season starts differently, and his maturity and his development isn't the same. We talked about, should first-year quarterbacks be starting? He just showed us that it is possible. CJ Stroud showed us last year, it is possible to be efficient and develop with time on the job. And for him to have the highest completion percentage as a rookie in NFL history, his third game into his career is incredible. So I'm buying that, Mitchell. It's hard not to buy that right now. And I'm trying to find because the Cincinnati Bengals played the Kansas City Chiefs last week. And so we got to see them against Patrick Mahomes in this defense against Patrick Mahomes. And I mean, they held him to 26 points. And that's pretty good for Patrick Mahomes coached offense. They got weapons. Their defense is really good. And then for him to score more points than Patrick Mahomes, is really something that you need to keep an eye on. These are two defenses, same defenses. He scored 38, Patrick scored 26. I'm obviously not saying he's anywhere in the stratosphere of Patrick Mahomes, but it just gives more credence that this is a defense that has played, and some guys that have played at a high level at times, and he really had his way with them. When he got pressure, it's sometimes complex looks, sometimes disguised looks that other quarterbacks struggle with. He was able to diagnose it, get the ball where it's supposed to be, only missed 2 throws, and even those 2 throws got criticized. So I'm buying him.
Love it. Richard, let's go to the NFC North. As much as it pains me to ask this question, I got to ask it. The Minnesota Vikings. I don't like you right now, Rich.
I'm sorry.
The Minnesota Vikings will win the North. Your thoughts, buy or sell? Please sell this, please, for the love of God.
Mitchell, I want to sell it. But Mitchell, I can't.
Oh, God.
Not right now. The stock is too hot. The Minnesota Vikings, if you really look at, and we're gonna look at this in a microcosm, in a vacuum, because I'm gonna go down a tangent here. But if you look at Brian Flores' time in Miami, they went on some winning streaks, Mitchell, where they played really good defense. And that he was forced to play Tua Tagovailoa. And I know we heard all Tua's comments about Flores and all this, but I remember that season where Ryan Fitzpatrick was having a really good year. He went to San Francisco, and I think he might have thrown for 400. It was a really crazy game, and he just was having a really good season. And then out of nowhere, they decide to sit him and say they're playing Tua. And Tua struggled initially. You know, everybody was saying it's the offense, and it's this and it's that. And I'm like, Fitz just threw for 400 with these same guys. So how is it the offense? And Tua can't throw for 100 yards. And obviously Tua's developed into, you know, found the perfect place with Mike McDaniels, got it paid, you know, playing really good football. But Brian Flores' defense has played historically well and given a lot of quarterbacks problems. And they won, I think, before he got fired from Miami, I think they won 7 straight to finish the season. And so it works. So to match that defense with Kevin O'Connell's offense, and during Kevin O'Connell's tenure, they've been a winning team. And Kirk Cousins got hurt, had the Achilles injury, so that knocked him off track. But they were even winning games with Dobbs because the system that he does a great job as a play caller, as a schemer, as a coach that understands situations, understands the defense. And then you got Justin Jefferson, arguably the best receiver in the National Football League. And then you insert Sam Darnold, who just seems like a hand-in-glove fit for this offense. It's just matches made in heaven, symbiosis all around within this organization. You talk about the home field advantage in Minnesota and that dome and the fans, you know, the skull chants, Aaron Jones and his impact. I'm sure he's looking forward to another good revenge game, old-fashioned revenge game against the Green Bay Packers. But they're looking like a really complete team, and it's hard to find weaknesses to this team, especially when you got guys like the Ginkler. He leaves. He's coming in, making an impact. Grenard has 4 sacks. You're getting contributions all over the place, so it's not even like you can key on one guy and say, hey, we got to stop this guy. We got to stop this guy. The pressure's coming from everywhere, and you lost guys like Danielle Hunter, and that left holes that you're like, hey, how are they going to fill that hole? And it's schematically. They're doing it by committee. They're doing it by, it's a team effort. Everybody's eating. Everybody's getting home. And I got to buy them. They're true contenders for the NFC North, but contenders in these playoffs and contenders for the 1 or 2 seed, especially in this NFC that looks wide open.
Richard, I'm going to sell your decision to buy that one. I don't mean to right. But the reason is I think the Detroit Lions are just getting going, and I think they're going to show you that on Monday Night Football. I think you're going to be probably throwing that hat around that you're wearing quite a bit, because you're going to be in disgust when the Lions go and take a double-digit win on Monday night in prime time. But I will say this about the Vikings. I do like their roster a lot. They're playing without Jordan Addison, without TJ Hawkinson. Seemingly everyone wrote them off this offseason. No one thought the Vikings would even be remotely in contention for the North, let alone a borderline Super Bowl contenders at this point, what they look like. And the Vikings got a hell of a lot of talent on that roster. So I'm definitely nervous. I'm buying the fact that I'm nervous as hell about the Minnesota Vikings.
Breaking news out of the NFL, where Packers quarterback Jordan Love is expected to return to the lineup on Sunday against the Minnesota Vikings. That is per multiple reports, including our lead NFL insider, Jonathan Jones. Now, Love has missed the past 2 games with a sprained MCL, with Malik Willis going 2-0 in his absence. You can catch Sunday's game between the Packers and the Vikings at 1 p.m. Eastern on CBS and streaming live on Paramount Plus. Welcome inside HQ Studios. Jeremy St. Louis alongside Danny Cannell. Danny, your reaction here, obviously a big boost for the Packers to get Jordan Love back.
Oh, this is huge, especially initially when the reports came out. You thought, man, this could be 4 to 6 weeks. What could it do to the Packers season? Jeremy, I remember you and I talked about it. We're like, you just got to go 500 when you lose your starting quarterback. To go 2-0 and to get him back sooner than expected, this is huge news for the Packers. And I think this will infuse some life in the organization, which has got to be feeling really good about where they stand right now in the NFL. Everybody everybody has picked up their game, and they got some really solid play out of Malik Willis. So this is great news for Packers fans. I think this is great. It's great for the NFL because I do think Jordan Love is one of the young faces of the league that's going to be playing here for a long time. Just signed the contract. I think this is awesome.
Given what we saw from Malik Willis and the fact that he did go 2-0 and the offense looked decent with him in it, obviously.
Are you stirring up quarterback controversy?
A reliance on the run. Josh Jacobs obviously a big part of things, but what I'm trying to say is, do you think Malik Willis still plays a part in this? Maybe as a kind of a spell quarterback at times.
I doubt it. I don't know if Matt LaFleur is going to want to do that, but it probably is an option. Maybe they sprinkle it in there. We've seen other quarterbacks before that are as mobile and athletic as Malik Willis is, and wildcat packages, short yardage situation, and then that debate always crops up. Well, do you want to take Jordan Love off the field? That'll be a decision they'll probably have to make. But I think the best part about this is now you have some depth at the position. Malik Willis looked like his career potentially was going off the rails when he started in Tennessee, was given the option with the Titans. And I think this is a prime example of where so many quarterbacks, we want to judge their success or failure by how they play on the field, when a lot of times it is about the surroundings, about the supporting cast, the coaching you receive and the development you receive. And it is a tribute to Matt LaFleur, who's done a phenomenal job with all the quarterbacks that he's coached, and getting the most out of Malik Willis, I think, is really a testament to him. And it's great to see a young quarterback who a lot of people had written off get an opportunity and make the most of it.
Minnesota Vikings come in as one of 5 undefeated teams in the NFL, sitting at 3-0. Packers there at 2-1. So when you look at Minnesota in this matchup, does this alter things, the way they set themselves up defensively, taking on Jordan Love versus taking on Malik Willis?
Yes, I mean, I think clearly because of what you mentioned, Malik Willis, and the way they were running the ball with Josh Jacobs, I think they'll be more prepared for a more balanced attack and be ready for that passing game to really sort of develop and evolve. So that's what I think Minnesota will do. But I don't think anything will change for them offensively. And speaking of quarterbacks that we're looking at, Sam Darnold is taking advantage of the opportunity there with the Vikings.
Yeah.
This is a traditional NFC North rivalry game that I don't think a lot of people thought we would have these two teams where they are, especially the Vikings sitting there at undefeated. No one saw that coming. It's going to be a fun matchup.
Yep. Following the breaking news here on CBS Sports HQ, Jordan Love is expected.
Dolphins are starting quarterback Tyler Snoop Huntley on Monday night against the Titans. Skylar Thompson, who started last week's loss to the Seahawks, is currently dealing with a rib injury. The Fins signed Huntley to their practice squad 2 weeks ago and have since elevated him to the 53-man roster, with Tua Tagovailoa sidelined with a concussion. Over to Detroit, where the Lions head coach Dan Campbell says he expects Sam Laporta to play on Monday against the Seahawks. The All-Pro tight end suffered a sprained ankle during last week's win against the Cardinals, but should be good to go. Laporta ranks 3rd on the Lions this season in both catches and receiving yards. And the Raiders will be without Davante Adams and Max Crosby for Sunday's game against the Browns. Adams is dealing with a hamstring injury while Crosby hurt his ankle. This will be the first game that Crosby misses in his 6-year career with the Raiders. Here's a look at some other notable injury reports heading into the weekend. A number of players already ruled out, including Cooper Kupp, Tank Dell, Trey McBride, and Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown, meanwhile, is questionable, as is Jordan Love, Joe Mixon, and Deebo Samuel. And down in New Orleans, the Saints could be without Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave, who are listed as questionable. In the NFL, the Miami Dolphins are starting quarterback Tyler Snoop Huntley on Monday night against the Titans. Skylar Thompson, who started last week's loss to the Seahawks, is currently dealing with a rib injury. The Fins signed Huntley to their practice squad 2 weeks ago and have since elevated him to the 53-man roster, with Tua Tagovailoa sidelined with a concussion. Over to Detroit, where the Lions head coach Dan Campbell says he expects Sam Laporta to play on Monday against the Seahawks. The All-Pro tight end suffered a sprained ankle during last week's win against the Cardinals, but should be good to go. Laporta ranks 3rd on the Lions this season in both catches and receiving yards. And the Raiders will be without Davante Adams and Max Crosby for Sunday's game against the Browns. Adams is dealing with a hamstring injury while Crosby hurt his ankle. This will be the first game that Crosby misses in his 6-year career with the Raiders. Here's a look at some other notable injury reports heading into the weekend. A number of players already ruled out, including Cooper Kupp, Tank Dell, Trey McBride, and Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown, meanwhile, is questionable, as is Jordan Love, Joe Mixon, and Deebo Samuel. And down in New Orleans, the Saints could be without Alvin Kamara and Chris Olave. We were finishing up our halftime show there, or our pregame show, I should say, and it was just crazy down to the wire. Damian, I hand this off to you. Unreal performance from Kentucky today.
Absolutely. Shout out to Mark Stoops, and this is just a testament to what he's done to this program. It's not always going to be pretty. They're not going to put up a ton of points. They're not going to wow you, but they're going to make teams that are good beat them. They're going to make it dirty. They're going to make it grimy. They're going to fight, scratch, and claw offensively, defensively, special teams to keep themselves in games and to put themselves to win games like this. You know, I think back to the home game that Kentucky won against LSU all those years ago when LSU was potentially ranked #1. And Mark Stoops has, granted, he wasn't there coaching at the time, but this is what he brings to that program. So huge win for Kentucky, huge win for Mark Stoops. Shout out to those guys in the blue.
I totally agree with everything you said. Congrats to Mark Stoops, but this is a devastating loss for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss.
Oh,
like, there's both sides of the story.
Sure.
I think this is what happens when you schedule a bunch of nobodies and you run through them and we all fall for it. We're like, well, they scored 76 points against Furman, and they go out there and blow out teams, Middle Tennessee, Georgia Southern, Wake Forest, one of the worst teams in the ACC, and everybody's like, look how great they look. You don't truly know the makeup of your team until you get tested, until you get punched in the mouth. And today, Ole Miss got punched in the mouth, and they did not respond. They looked shook for most of the second half, thinking, wait a second, this team is still trying against us? We're Ole Miss. We blow out everybody. And they did not respond to the test. So this is, yes, it's about Kentucky, but it's also about Ole Miss coming up short in a year where their fan base thought they were on a straight line for the playoffs and potentially a national championship. This is a devastating loss for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss.
Well, Ole Miss still have everything they want right in front of them with the new format of college football playoff. I know I say this a million times, especially being in the SEC. But going into the halftime show, I said it, this can be the upset of the year if Kentucky finds a way to pull this off. Just the simple fact of going into Ole Miss, all these high expectations, unranked Kentucky, coming off a nail-biter, really a nail-biter versus Georgia, and going in here and getting this win. Kentucky finds a way to be in games they really shouldn't be in, and then the following week, they're, you know, you get blown out by Mizzou or something like that.
South Carolina, they lost 31-6 to South Carolina.
Exactly. So, I mean, this will happen when you let teams like that stick around for too long. Ole Miss was, I mean, Kentucky was allowed to really open up this game and sustain that energy, and really got it all the way down to the wire and ultimately getting a W. So.
Let me ask you this. What went wrong for Ole Miss in this one? Because we kind of talked about how they dropped the ball on this. What went wrong?
They just didn't respond well to being punched in the face. They didn't respond well. You see a 63-yard completion on 4th and long. Plays like that, you just don't respond well enough to regain the momentum. And going into a hostile environment, being a home team, and then you got a team like Kentucky coming in there and they making these big plays, you feel that energy start to seep away because your fan base is like, oh my God, another one, like, what are you guys are doing? Kentucky, like,